Hey, it's Heather, and today I'm going to tell you about a trip I took with my family to Colonial Williamsburg and Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello. In Colonial Williamsburg, I had the chance to view three different kinds of kitchens. The first was the governor's mansion, huge, fabulous kitchen, and when they're cooking in the colonial period, it was an all-day affair, very labor-intensive. The second was a merchant's dining room, which again, not nearly the scale, but certainly very upper crust. And finally, a slave quarters. And the thing about the slave quarters is that that is likely how most Virginians lived, with the very huge exception that they were not owned unless they were African American. Then we went to Thomas Jefferson's extraordinary home, Monticello, which is a world apart. This is a house that was a lifetime in the making by a brilliant man who was quite dedicated to the pleasures of life. He had a cook. Of course, lots of stories about his being the father of Sally Hemings' children, very interesting, but it was really interesting to me as a cook, and I learned a lot about it in this wonderful Pulitzer Prize winning book by Annette Gordon-Reed, The Hemingses of Monticello, is that Sally Hemings' brother was his chef, who he took with him to France, as he did Sally, where they started their liaison. And while Sally was with Thomas, James was learning everything about French cooking. So people talk about how Thomas Jefferson brought French food to America. I guarantee you it was James doing the cooking and not President Jefferson. I'm cooking today a dish that the whole experience inspired me. It is a pumpkin cake with two sauces. Pumpkin being very American, used in a lot of the traditional cooking, and two sauces, one quite French, that I am really quite certain was part of their meal, and one that's just classic chocolate. You can't go wrong. So we're gonna get in the kitchen and get cooking. All right, so don't let all these bowls fool you. It's a very simple cake. We're going to start with mixing our wet. Our pumpkin, it's about 1.25 cups of that canned pumpkin, not the pumpkin pie mix. I have here 3/4 cup of buttermilk, which is a nice addition. Then you just mix that up, and then we're going to add to that some vanilla, a teaspoon. We are not adding any regular milk. The regular milk is replaced by the pumpkin and buttermilk. So we're going to do a teaspoon of vanilla. The oven should be waiting at 350, and I'm cooking it in a 13×9 pan. You can do a bundt pan, but I want something square. My vision is square for this cake. All right, so that is our wet. It's totally ready. I have in this pan, this bowl, simply regular all-purpose flour, not even sifted, but carefully measured. You know, spoon it in, level it off. 2¼ cups, to which I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder and a teaspoon of baking soda. A lot of leavening. That pumpkin's kind of heavy. And I'm also going to add here my spice. I have here about 4 teaspoons of spice. I chose cinnamon, allspice, and I put in the pumpkin spice because it has a little bit of everything. Nothing's too outstanding. If you really like ginger, take out a little bit of the cinnamon. Add that and you whisk it all together. So this is our dry. Now I have one more bowl here with 1.5 sticks of softened butter. Now here's the thing with butter when you're baking. If it says softened, it needs to be softened. Putting it in the microwave might melt it too far, and you know what? It makes a difference. Now I'm going to add in my 1.25 cups of regular old white sugar. This is where we're going to use our mixer and get it all nice and fluffy. So I'm mixing here for about 2 minutes. It's nice and fluffy. It's at high speed. I'm going to now add my eggs, one at a time, total of 3. Classic cake mixing stuff. Now on a lower speed, I'm going to start with my flour and alternate dry, wet, starting with the flour, ending with the flour. No need to be too scientific about it. As far as baking goes, this is a pretty forgiving recipe. Now, a little bit of the pumpkin mixture. Low speed. as you can see, is a pretty stiff cake batter. And I have here, waiting, my prepared 13 by 9 inch pan. By prepared, I mean buttered and floured. Very simple and straightforward. I'm gonna empty it in here. And we wanna really make sure it fits into all those corners. Like I said, a 350 oven. This will take about 40 to 45 minutes. And you want to check it, of course, with the toothpick method. You don't necessarily want the toothpick to come out completely dry. 1 or 2 crumbs is okay. All right, I checked my cake for doneness, let it cool, sprinkled on a little confectioner's sugar, and then I got to the sauces. One easy as pie, one incredibly fussy, but both quite French. The first, the fussy, a creme anglaise. You heat half and half with a vanilla bean, some orange zest, bring it up to a boil. Meanwhile, egg yolks, sugar, blanchir is the step. You get it all mixed up together. Then you temper those eggs so you don't scramble them. A little bit of the milk mixture. Get it all tempered so it won't turn into scrambled eggs. Put it in a pot and then you cook it until it beautifully coats the back of a wooden spoon. Delicious, aromatic, and extremely classical French. This is essentially what you make ice cream from, but it is also a wonderful sauce for a wide variety of desserts. The next one, so easy, can't believe it. I guarantee you, you'll be doing this over and over. You take heavy cream, let's say a cup, put a dab of butter in it, bring it up to a boil. Meanwhile, in a bowl, put about 1.5 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Pour the hot cream over the chocolate chips, let it sit for about 3 minutes, whisk it together. Oh my gosh, you're a rock star. Really great chocolate sauce. Now, both of these sauces go beautifully with the pumpkin. Chocolate and pumpkin, really good. Orange and pumpkin, fabulous. I'm, of course, going to serve it with a wine, not just any wine, a port. What I have here is a tawny port. There's several kinds, but there's ruby and tawny. Ruby's a bit richer. Tawny is a little lighter. Both go beautifully with fruit and chocolate and are the perfect Christmas meal. So here is my colonial-inspired touch of France holiday cake. I'm, of course, going to take a taste. I'm going to do a little bit of each sauce. Chocolate and orange, great combination. Happy holidays. For wines, for recipes, for much, much more, please see my website, sogood.tv.